Coal is dirty. Burning coal releases dangerous chemicals into the air, including mercury, arsenic, and radioactive elements like thorium and uranium. These toxic emissions contribute to respiratory problems, heart disease, and even cancer. What if I told you that one day coal could be clean? It's not just relatively clean, but literally clean. What if it were possible for coal plants to burn coal without emitting anything but water vapor and carbon dioxide? Well, believe it or not, scientists are working on making this possible with a process called oxy-coal combustion. Coal plants typically burn coal in giant furnaces at around 1,000 degrees Celsius. This produces heat, which makes water vapor and carbon dioxide. But these are also produced when you burn wood or natural gas, and those things aren't considered clean either. The problem is that burning coal also produces a bunch of other stuff, like sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, particulate matter, and the toxic chemicals I mentioned earlier. To reduce these emissions, many coal plants use scrubbers, which are devices that remove pollutants from the exhaust. Before it goes out the smokestack, scrubbers are effective at removing most of the particulates and chemicals, but they have their own drawbacks. For example, they require a lot of water, which can be a problem in dry areas. They also produce large quantities of toxic waste that have to be dealt with. And even with scrubbers, coal plants emit tons of carbon dioxide, which contributes to global warming. So researchers are exploring ways to burn coal more cleanly, like by burning it in pure oxygen instead of the roughly 21% oxygen in air. This might sound kind of familiar because pure oxygen is used to fuel the engines on most rocket launches. Burning coal in pure oxygen would have a couple of major benefits. First, all the nitrogen in the air would be removed from the coal plant's exhaust, significantly reducing its contribution to smog and acid rain. Second, since there's no nitrogen left to react with, coal wouldn't produce any nitrogen oxides, which are greenhouse gases, and also contribute to acid rain. And finally, burning coal in pure oxygen means that the coal burns hotter and more completely, which reduces the production of carbon monoxide and other potentially harmful chemicals. Of course, burning coal in pure oxygen doesn't mean that the only things produced are carbon dioxide and water vapor. Some pollutants like sulfur dioxide are still produced when coal is burned in pure oxygen. But there's another major benefit to burning coal this way. It produces much less carbon dioxide. That's because when coal is burned in air, some of it turns into a gas called carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide doesn't burn as easily as coal, so some of the carbon in the coal ends up just combining with the oxygen in the air, instead of burning completely. This reduces the amount of carbon dioxide produced and creates a lot of soot as a byproduct. But when coal is burned in pure oxygen, almost all of the carbon in the coal has a chance to combine with oxygen and turn into carbon dioxide. So the overall result is much cleaner. Now, burning coal in pure oxygen isn't a new idea. In fact, it was patented back in the early 1900s. But it wasn't very practical then because the process required high pressure and high temperature. Nowadays, though, we have much better materials that can withstand high temperatures and pressures, making the process more feasible. But while burning coal in pure oxygen is an improvement over traditional coal burning, it's still not exactly clean. The coal still produces carbon dioxide and other potentially harmful chemicals like sulfur dioxide. Still, this technology could be a good option for places that rely on coal for electricity, but want to reduce its environmental impact. For example, China produces about 60% of the world's coal-powered electricity, but also suffers from severe air pollution. China has already begun testing oxy-coal combustion in some of its power plants. If it works well, it could help improve the health of millions of people while reducing the country's carbon footprint. And who knows, maybe one day coal really will be clean. Thanks for watching.